Investors cautiously welcome the UK budget. Big investors have added to their positions in UK gilts after Wednesday's budget, giving a broadly positive welcome to Rachel Reeves's plans to give herself more fiscal headroom. Sterling hit its highest level against the dollar since late October, after some pre-budget jitters made currency markets nervous. In the long run, though, the UK's economic growth is still expected to be weaker. Altaf Kassam is Europe Head of Investment Strategy and Research at State Street. Altaf, the bond market at least seems fairly positive about this, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's true. It does take time for the budget to be digested. And when I've talked to people who've been involved in the process, they usually wait till the Monday after to see really what the market's final reaction might be. And we've got a kind of cautiously positive reaction, like you said, on the day. But this morning, we've seen gilt yields at the short end back up a bit more. Feels like the market's getting a bit more worried about inflation, not really believing the quite optimistic forecasts from the OBR. You're right, sterling did strengthen, but again, we think some of the pillars that have been supporting sterling recently will be taken away as yields fall. So it does feel like there's still a bit of flux out there.
What impact might this have on inflation then, and what do you think Bank of England policymakers are thinking?
I don't think that the budget will have a huge impact on inflation, but it was clear that the OBR's forecasts for inflation were just too low. And I think they've admitted that, and they've kind of reset there. So inflation is still kind of in the mid 3% region, which is clearly higher than the Bank of England's target. But I guess, unfortunately, in a way, because the budget hasn't really come up with a plan for growth, the Bank of England might be emboldened to have a December rate cut because they need to worry about both growth and inflation. It feels like growth is staying weak.
Is there anything here that could help boost Britain's weak growth?
Very little, I'm afraid. Yeah, it feels like this wasn't a budget for growth, which is what, when the government came in, they said was one of their priorities. It's a budget about, trying to deliver a bit more spending without increasing headline taxes. But really what it's done is kind of push the problem a couple of years down the line. But what it hasn't done is come up with a panacea for growth, and especially productivity, which has been the real thing that's been holding the UK back relative to its peers.
Now, one of Reeves' aims is to boost the UK stock market, which of course has been weak for years by international comparison. She cut, for example, the cap on cash ISAs to encourage investment in shares instead. But for the FTSE, for UK stocks, what could this change?
Yeah, when you think about the FTSE 100 in particular, what you realise is that it's a big index of largely multinational corporations whose revenues come from all over the world. So the one thing that does tend to flatter their revenues is weaker sterling. And we do think that will come about in the medium term. So we could see that help the FTSE higher, although, like I said, it's kind of flattering and just cosmetic. On the other hand, the UK isn't cheap anymore as a market. So it's hard to point to kind of anything on the valuation side that will boost the equity market. What we really need is a bit more foreign direct investment, FDI. We need flows to come into the UK. And those have been held back by a lack of confidence from foreigners. And we really need to see that confidence rebuilt. And again, for that, I think we need a plan for growth. And unfortunately, that hasn't been available in the budget so far.
You said that this postpones some big decisions for the longer term. What then are the questions the government will face in the future after this?
Yeah, how to actually stimulate growth, where to find the impetus for people to invest in the UK, how to lift consumer confidence. What we've seen is a budget that's kind of pleased everyone and pleased no one at the same time. And I think we need something a bit more direct. We're going to have to navigate the volatility of the local elections, and I think that's the government's next hurdle.
That was Altaf Kassam of State Street. Don't forget, you can watch more videos on Reuters.com.